Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for coming to Gesu's 26th Annual Symposium. You'll hear from me in a little bit at the
Gesu has given me an opportunity to participate in STEM activities like traveling to the United States Naval Academy last year for Girls STEM Day and participating in a STEM Day at the Academy of Notre Dame. One of the reasons I'm proud to be a student here is because Gesu has been an education leader in the region and beyond for more than 20 years. From the beginning, our symposium has featured some of the country's leading voices addressing critical and current topics. Today, we are honored to be joined by keynote speaker Justin Schaefer. Yesterday, Mr. Schaefer presented a dynamic, exciting STEM assembly for our 6th through 8th graders, so I know you're in for a fun and interesting presentation. Justin, Mr. Fascinate Schaefer, is an award-winning TV host and producer who is at the forefront of transforming science and tech education. Justin is a visionary leader in media, science, and technology. He has produced and starred in creative concepts with major networks and companies like ABC, PBS, Digital Studios, Chevy Bolt, and more. As the founder of Fascinate Media, Mr. Schaefer is revolutionizing the way students learn by creating immersive educational experiences and content using 3D, VFX, virtual production, and generative AI. His goal is to become the ESPN of STEM, inspiring young people to embrace their inner nerd and pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, regardless of their surroundings. Driven by his own life experience growing up in a single-parent home on the south side of Chicago, Justin is dedicated to giving back to the community. He leverages his social media influence to create impactful STEM education projects, including the STEM Success Summit, a global conference. Justin's active speaking career has earned him keynote opportunities for corporate stakeholders, students, and educators around the world. To date, Justin's work has reached millions of students, educators, corporate stakeholders, and has been featured in Forbes, NBC News, Yahoo Finance, Afrotech, and more. He has been recognized as a LinkedIn top voice in technology and has recently been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list for education. It is my privilege to welcome Justin Shaver to Gesu School.
Thank you, Ariel. That was incredible. Yeah, that was a lot though. Thank you for getting that all out of your system. What's going on, everybody? How are y'all doing today? So my name is Justin Schaefer. I tell the kids this all the time. I go by the name of Mr. Fascinate. Can I get everybody to say Mr. Fascinate? And I'm here to talk to you all about AI in the context of education. There's a lot of stuff that I want to share with you all, but I want to give you all some specific takeaways. We'll unpack a lot of that more, but let me give you all a little history lesson from my perspective with AI. So in the beginning, in 2019, when I started doing a lot of this work, I was traveling all over the world, speaking to young people. I've met hundreds of thousands of Gen Zers in person, spoken with them, understood their sentiments about technology, and gathered that context, right? Then there's a company that I worked with that is now kind of famous, NVIDIA. How many of us have heard of NVIDIA now? So they recently became valued at $1 trillion because of their AI innovation. But I was working with them in 2020 with NVIDIA Jetson Nanos. How many of us have heard of this product, the Jetson Nanos? How many of us know what Raspberry Pis are? All right, we got some STEM folks in the building. Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, essentially Jetson Nanos are Raspberry Pis for AI. So you can build like facial recognition trackers and things like that. A really cool and relatively affordable educational tool for students. 2021, I ended up building an app on a no-code platform. How many of us have heard of no-code platforms? Okay, it's an uncommon one. So bubble.io is a pretty common website that people use to build apps without coding at all. So remember when I first got into STEM education about 5 or 6 years ago, the overarching message is that every student needs to learn how to code, right? Well, now you can just type stuff in on these no-code platforms and build it. And so I actually built this platform called Beyond, a STEM education platform, which pivoted a few times and then got sold, all on a no-code platform. 2022, I had a pretty crazy experience, which I shared with our students yesterday. I got rejected by Amica the robot, and I can show you this better than I can tell you. May need to refresh or something. I don't know if there's an issue with the video. This one's worth it, y'all. This one's worth the buffering, I promise you. Yeah, maybe like a quick refresh on the screen. I think that was kind of the tech issue that we were having yesterday too. I should get it up and running. So yeah, so just to give you all a little context before you all see, Amica the robot, how many of us have heard of Amica? Anyone? Okay, a few of us. Amica is now a world famous robot, and part of the reason that she became world famous is because of this clip. So I want to share that with y'all without giving too much away. But I feel like when we were all younger, we used to see these depictions of sci-fi where there'd be walking, talking robots that could listen to you and all these kind of things. And the crazy thing to me is that in January of 2022, how realistic all this stuff was. So I'm super excited to share this with y'all. If not, we can maybe play it at the end, but you all let me know if we're good back there. So a little additional context while we're waiting. How many of us have heard of CES, the Consumer Electronics Showcase? Yeah, so this all happened at CES, which is like the largest tech event in the world in Las Vegas. And it's an incredible time where all the innovative gadgets are shown. And actually CES is happening right now this year in Vegas. So a really cool opportunity for if you want to expose your students to innovation and what's happening in the tech space, you can show them CES. Like there's all kind of media coverage and all kind of stuff like that happening. Everything looking good back there? I can move to the next slide if we need to. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And so the next clip I was going to share with you all is about using AI to change educational media. So my vision. So once I had this mind-blowing experience, which hopefully I'll be able to share with you all at some point, is and maybe I can just tell the story of what happened. So essentially, I was meeting up with this robot, and everyone was asking the robot questions. Amica's literally like looking at you and answering questions, and you can walk away, come back 5 minutes later, it'll remember who you are, what question you asked, and then it'll give that context, right? So everyone was asking like, oh, what is the future of intelligence and the future of humanity? And I asked Amica if she wanted to be my girlfriend. And Amica was like, no, and like dissed me basically in front of everybody. So then I was like, whoa, that was a crazy experience. And then I walked back up to Amica and I was like, hey, Amica, nice to see you again. And Amica was like, I hope you don't ask me out again. I was like, whoa. So I go to sleep, wake up the next morning, I have a phone full of text messages, like 40 text messages in my phone. Everyone's like, dude, you're all over national news. This clip apparently got 18 million views on TikTok. And it like it catapulted Amica, who's already a really cool robot, into like this global fame. But because she cleverly dissed me in front of the world, so I was kind of the butt of the joke. Should I try to play it again, or should I just keep going to the next one? Okay, let's try it. Yeah, it's looking like the same issue. So it's okay. Maybe I'll be able to share it with y'all at the end. It's a funny clip, but yeah, it got 18 million views on TikTok. The kids were raving about this, and then I was like, wait a minute, AI is really changing because if you think about all the things that have to happen for a robot to do that, it has to have facial recognition, motion tracking to be able to like look at you right in the eye and talk to you. It has to hear what you say, have short and long-term memory and understand that when it's coming from your voice, like your specific vocal signature, that's the person that's talking. Like all these things are really easy for our human brains to do seamlessly, but for us to program a robot to do that was fascinating to me. So I really got obsessed with AI at this point. This was a turning point for me, and I started using it in a lot of the educational media content I was making. And I have another clip, and we'll see if we can play this one. Yeah, well, no worries. We'll try to get back to this at the end. But essentially what I was going to talk about in this clip here is how we are revolutionizing education with artificial intelligence in video. And so I'm working with a friend of mine, Dakota Tyler. He's a PhD astrophysicist. And he does a lot of TikTok videos where he's basically sitting in front of the camera and talking at the video. But we wanted to take that to the next level. And so we use this green screen environment here to put him on the surface of different planets. So what Dakota does is he studies exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system. What better way to teach kids about that than to place him on the surface of these planets and almost have like a vlog? Like, how many of us remember Steve Irwin, rest in peace, back in the day? So imagine if Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, was on these different planets exploring things. And so that's what we were able to do using a lot of cutting edge technology and artificial intelligence. So we built these environments using a lot of AI tools and real pictures. So yeah, we'll probably be able to play the clip for you all a little bit later. But again, this segment for you all is about AI empowerment, right? What I want you all to walk away with is a couple of things: an enhanced understanding of AI, why it's important today, where we are with AI today, and two, for those of us in the audience that work directly with students, I want to give you all 3 specific AI activities that you can use in your classroom today. You can rejigger them however you need to for whatever scenario you're in with your students, all right? So we're gonna pivot over to some icebreaker questions in Kahoot. So we all have our phones, hopefully, and we are familiar with Kahoot, right? Yeah, yesterday we had a pretty crazy time with Kahoot with the kids. It got pretty intense up in here. So I want to gauge you all's sentiments around AI, where we stand today, and how all this feeds into the bigger picture. So just in case some people in here are unfamiliar, you go to kahoot.it on your phone's internet browser, and then you type the game pin in, which is 560534. And then you can make a username, and we got Pigeon as our first person. Gesu rocks. Ariel, okay, quick. JV. JM. All right. So yeah, it looks like we got a few dozen people in here. Maybe okay, here we go. So maybe we'll start it when it gets to over 45 or so. It's pretty close right now. I see 40, 41. All right. Yeah, we're at 45. So yeah, we can go ahead and start that Kahoot. So just 3 questions here. I want to see where you all are at. All right. So the first question here, and this is not a competitive one, so you don't have to be on the edge of your seats. Not yet. So where do you stand with AI right now? And this is basically a spectrum question, right? On one end, there's the concerned and confused, right? Like, I don't really know what this stuff is. I have no idea what's going on, and I hope it doesn't take my job. And on the other side of that, it's like, I'm confident and competent. I'm using AI tools all the time. I'm completely fearless when it comes to AI. Let's see where you all stand. Remember, this one isn't a competition. It's not about who answers first. All right, so yeah, let's throw those answers. Let's see where people are at. Okay. All right, so interesting. It's very interesting, right? So most of us stand, I guess, a little below the middle. So we're kind of in between, but a little less than in between. A little more concerned and confused than competent and confident, right? So that's interesting. All right, let's go to the next one. So which grade level do you work with the most often? So this one, I just want to see who's in the room. Who are we talking to? Maybe you work with adults, say 12 plus. And if you're in 8th grade, you could probably just say 8th grade, because you probably work with 8th graders. All right, okay, so that's interesting. Okay, mostly K through 5, okay. So that helps me, so I can talk about some ways to incorporate these things into younger audiences' content. So, okay, thank you all for that. And then this is the last one. Last icebreaker question. What word would you associate with AI in education? All right, so this one is like a brainstorm, right? So just give me one word that, when you think of AI in the context of education, what's the first word that comes to mind? All right, I think we're almost there. All right, let's see what we got. Amazing resource, computer, geocatastrophe, superior, exciting, beneficial, innovative, tool, future. Cheating! It's overrepresented. Tool is overrepresented. Future, helpful, daunting, revolutionary, concerning, numbing. This one's interesting again. I see some people taking pictures of this. This is funny. This is a funny one. So you want to know another interesting thing? I've been doing these kind of workshops for educators probably since the dawn of ChatGPT, which I'm going to talk about a little more. And it's interesting how the sentiments have started to shift. Like, I think in the beginning, everyone was like, oh, it's only a problem. It's only cheating. It's only daunting. But now I see a lot of positive adjectives. That's really, really interesting. All right, well, yeah, we're going to put the Kahoot on pause and we'll go back to the presentation. So just keep that open in your phones if you don't mind, and then we'll go back to it a little bit later. All right, thank you for that icebreaker. So, how many of us have heard of LLMs? The term LLMs. Okay, we got a few folks. So, ChatGPT is an LLM, and that is one of the big internet terms that you might have heard. It's a big buzzword today, and it stands for large language model, right? Large language model. But the way that I like to think of LLMs, and I will admit that my opinion on this may be a little controversial, is the everything calculator. Now, this is a little before my time, but I imagine there was a time when there weren't calculators, and we had to do long division by hand every time, right? I come from the generation where there were calculators, and we still had to learn how to do long division. We still had to conceptually understand what long division was, but we understood that it was kind of a tedious process, and so we recognized, okay, let's understand how long division works, but we don't need to do it every time. But here's this tool that you can use now that you understand it, right? And so I like to think of these large language models as the new calculator for every aspect of education, whether that be researching, essay writing, right? However, as precise and perfect as calculators can be with math, LLMs aren't there yet. And so there's ethics and concerns that we still need to unpack. But one thing that we're building towards as an educating community for students is if we have the everything calculator, students still need to understand conceptually what they're learning. They need to understand these concepts. But now that we have the everything calculator at our fingertips for free, well, what work has now become superfluous, redundant, unnecessary? Those are the sort of things that we have to start thinking about, all right? So my first experience with LLMs was in London, UK, November 30th, 2022. I was, traveling. I was getting this award for a PBS show that we had just made. And I was like, whoa, I'm gonna actually relax and chill in London for a little bit. And then all this stuff came out literally the next day. These are a couple posts I made on Instagram about generative AI exploding and how people were asking it to do complex math problems and coding. And it was just breaking the internet. How many of us were like around Twitter for that time when it was like really popping off? Yeah, so it was really a really big deal in that early time. And I was one of the first less than 1 million people that was an adopter, because I was like, man, I want to jump in and see what this is all about. So I got in there, I started messing around with it and using some of the other AI tools. And so what I realized is that instead of actually having fun and enjoying my vacation, I'm like sitting in the house in London making like images like these using AI tools, right? And I actually didn't even have the usual vacation. This was my AI-cation, right? So this was a crazy experience for me, and I went back home where I live now in Los Angeles, and I met a friend of mine whose name I don't want to reveal, but they work at a really big tech company that we've all heard of. And I asked them, and they specifically work in AI. And I asked them, I said, hey, all this ChatGPT stuff is breaking the internet. This is insane. What do you think about all this? And they're like, yeah, that stuff is cool, but the stuff that we're working on at our company is completely next level. Like, you'll see. I can't tell you about it. It's completely next level. I said, okay, that's pretty crazy. So if you all remember how this timeline continues, soon after that, ChatGPT hit 1 million users in 5 days. It broke the record for the fastest adopted technology ever in history, right? Then it reached 100 million users 2 months after launch, again breaking another record. And then if you all remember this headline, the godfather of AI, this big founder of AI, left Google and warned of the dangers ahead, right? So I saw all these headlines. I meet up with my friend again in Los Angeles, and I say, hey, what do you think about all this? And they're like, yeah, actually, I don't know what to think. I just got fired. They lost their AI job. And so that's when I realized we got to sound the alarm here, because a person that is on the inside of all of this in AI doesn't understand the exponential growth curve trajectory that we're on with AI. So, and it's really hard for human brains to process exponential growth. And this person thought that they knew what the next couple months had in store, but their company got usurped by ChatGPT. All right, so, and what I realized after that was how much AI is disrupting every industry, right? Like I'm a STEM guy, so these are the things that come front of mind for me. I don't know if you all have seen like AI developing proteins and new treatments in the science field. In media, it's disrupting AI in some of the ways I talked about, and AI is disrupting AI. Like people were coming up with these innovative tools that ChatGPT could use, and then ChatGPT came out with an update, and then it made all those tools obsolete. So it's like everything is disrupting everything is disrupting everything, all right? So this is a complicated situation that we're in, and I'm a business owner, right? I own a media production company. I'm like, wait a minute, we gotta find some AI literate Gen Zers, right? And so I'm reaching out to Gen Zers. These are probably 21, 22-year-olds, mostly fresh out of college, and they're sending me their resumes, and I'm realizing that there's this thing that's happening in my brain, right? Where if it's a kid that's just as competent as another kid, everything on paper is the same, but they know how to use ChatGPT very proficiently, I'm gonna go with that kid. And so that makes you think about, as an educator, it's our jobs to prepare students for the future workforce. And if AI is a necessary skill to be a competitive applicant in a resume, how can we best prepare our students for this already changed world? It's not a changing world. It's not like, oh, we used to always give these kind of doom and gloom far out in the future. Like, no, we're here now. The world has changed, all right? Traditional education has been disrupted. Like, I feel like when I first got into this whole space, it was on the horizon. And we always talked about, 10 years, 20 years. And then COVID hit and brought us all inside. We were like, man, this seemed a little different. And then AI hits and it's like, oh no, it's gonna change forever. It's never gonna be the same as it is before. I think it's a message that we all have to accept at this point because the data is there. The data supports it. But how has it been disrupted? So a couple of things, I don't know, and I wanna see a show of hands if any of us have heard of this. How many of us have heard of Conmigo? So Khan Academy, we've heard of probably. Yeah, so Conmigo is Khan Academy's personalized AI tutor. So they use the information that has been created from all of the data from Conmigo, and you can now, as a student, you can talk to Conmigo and it can solve specific problems, identify your areas of weakness, and like one-on-one give you specific consultation and education based on what your learning deficiency might be or proficiency might be, all right? Another tool, and this one's gotten pretty popular, Duolingo Max. How many of us have used Duolingo, the app? So how many of us have heard of the Duolingo Max, the AI tool? It's not as popular, right? But this is all stuff that's on the horizon. It's a learning experience where, again, you're getting a personalized language tutor. So I think the biggest issue with Duolingo is they're teaching hundreds of millions of people how to learn, but like, I might know subject-verb agreement in Spanish, but like, I'm not struggling with this other thing, right? But now it can use the data of your Duolingo results and make a personalized tutor for you that you can literally have Spanish conversations with, right? So, okay, so I know I'm going in a lot of different concepts, right? But we're going in a direction here. So I want to step back for a little second here and talk about Gen Z, right? And we all should be familiar with this term at this point, digital natives, right? The kids that grew up with they didn't grow up with CD Walkmans and cassette tapes. How many of us remember those? Show of hands. All right, how many of us remember the You know what I'm talking about, Ariel? No, she has no idea. That's an insider. We should just keep her out of the loop. What's funny though is that actually what I realized is that even kids that were even adults that are like 5 years younger than me don't remember that noise. So it's crazy how fast technology's changed in that way. But Generation Z, digital natives, many digital natives have the experience of growing up with iPads or tablets in their hands, high-speed internet. Does this sound familiar to you, Ariel? Okay. Do you remember like having buffering times, like that video that buffered? Do you remember having to sit for like 10 minutes and wait for a video to buffer? You do remember that? Oh, okay. Huh. That's surprising. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of Gen Zers experience high-speed internet, instant access to information, and it changes the way they think about education. And a few interesting stats about Gen Z. The most racially and ethnically diverse so far. So 48% of Gen Zers identify as non-white, compared to 39% of millennials. How many of us have heard the term Gen Alpha? It's an emerging term. It's a generation after Gen Z. It's supposed to be the first generation in US history where more of them identify as non-white. So diversity is on the rise with each subsequent generation. Generation Z is set to be the most well-educated generation yet in terms of traditional degrees, traditional education, but I also argue that it's going to be in terms of non-traditional education as well. We'll unpack that a little bit more. Another interesting stat here, globally, Gen Z are spending an average of 8 hours per day online. And we know that that's just not watching TV, that's not just radio, that's socializing, that's interacting with their friends. They're having really dynamic experiences online that aren't just couch potato experiences. And we have to account for these things. So I want to give you all an insightful story about Gen Z. And if you're an educator that's worked with a Gen Zer, maybe this one resonates with you. So I'm a big fan of Kahoot. Everybody knows it at this point. And so I did a workshop a few years ago called Silicon Valley 101. I was teaching kids about all the innovation in Silicon Valley. I was about 30 kids in the classroom, and these are sixth graders. And so I remember asking them at the beginning of the class, how many of you all have heard of Silicon Valley, right? Show of hands. And most of the kids didn't raise their hand, right? So these are kids that just didn't know that much about tech, information-wise. So I taught them all this stuff, had a really fun workshop, and at the end we do a Kahoot. I'm like, it's gonna be a smash hit, all right? So what I'm expecting is for 30 students to jump into my Kahoot. And so this is not during COVID, this is pre-COVID, so I had like the smart board behind me, all right? And so there was an error in my quiz game. And just like right now, they're like the kids in front of me are like smiling and snickering and laughing. I'm like, what is going on? I turn around to look at the smart board, which is behind me. I'll look here, and I see that there's 9,999 people in my quiz game. One of them's name is Poophead22. Other one's name is Yo Mama 50. And then I think my favorite was Fart Daddy 44. Any guesses on what happened? Any guesses on what happened to me that day? Yes. I was hacked. Yeah, that's what happened. I was hacked. Who was I hacked by? The class clown. Instead of, doing a spitball or, balling up a piece of paper and throwing it at me, the class clown hacked into my quiz game, right? He out-nerded the nerd. So, of course, I have to now this guy is I'm now the apprentice, right? So I'm like, and of course, you can always identify who did it because they're laughing way harder than everybody else, right? So the school is furious, and I'm like a guest presenter. The school gets furious and they're upset with the kid. I'm like, no, this is amazing. I'm inspired by this kid. So I go and finally walk up to him. I'm like, hey man, how'd you learn how to do that? I didn't know how to do that. What do you think he said? How did he learn? YouTube. In fact, this kid had a bachelor's degree from the University of YouTube from watching YouTube videos. This doesn't actually exist. I made this up. But the kid watched so many YouTube videos all the time about tech stuff. He didn't know what Silicon Valley was, but he taught himself how to hack into quiz games so he could impress the cute girl in class, right? I thought this was so fascinating. And I was like, okay, so all this is happening right now, right? I'm like, what does this mean for us as educators? What do we do with all this information? What do we do with this place that we're in life where a kid can watch a 5-minute video and get a more efficient piece of information, or they can get a personalized tutor and learn directly one-on-one? It's like, okay, a lot of these things are what I used to do as a teacher, right? So what are we supposed to do now? Where do we go? What is our direction? So I think an obvious thing that I think usually resonates with a lot of the educators I speak with is a transition, right? From, not always lecturing the kids, not always talking at the kids. And I think a lot of educators have adopted this already. If you're giving a kid a 60-minute lecture on a topic, they can probably watch a 5-minute YouTube video, rewatch it, and then get the information they need, find captions for it, get images attached to it. So it's probably more efficient to facilitate their learning and help them figure out what they need to learn and guide them through the process of learning, help them critically analyze the information to make sure it's factually correct. And so that is where I think a lot of our roles are going to as educators, and how we can continue to be effective with the students that we're working with. So Because I think this is a big problem. Again, I've talked to hundreds of thousands of Gen Zers from K through 12 and beyond, and a lot of their sentiment is like, why do I continue to opt into traditional education if there's free, accessible education that exists all around us? I can watch a YouTube video for free. I can go to Khan Academy. I can type ChatGPT up and do some research there. Why do I need to like listen to all these archaic, slow-moving things if I can just learn this way, right? What is the value proposition of education? And we really have to be clear on that if we're going to continue to retain students, continue to keep them interested, continue to keep the parents engaged, right? And so this is what a lot of these Gen Z students are dealing with, right? They have these modern supplements and replacements for degrees, like certifications, right? You can get an online certification for a few $100s. You can work with a large brand, and that can be enough to like legitimize you in the eyes of many people. You can get major press like a TED Talk or Forbes feature, or a respectable digital portfolio. Like a lot of friends of mine are fully employed based on their Instagram pages. They'll make a page, like let's say they're a videographer or photographer. They'll make a page of their photos, and then that's how they'll continue to get booked, right? They don't need a resume. They don't need a degree. They don't need all these other things because they found a cheap, non-traditional way to replace all of those things. And so when I think about what the value proposition is for schools, these are some of the things that I continue to think we should lean into in terms of stepping direction, in terms of a sense of direction. Stepping stones to universities, there's expensive equipment still, hardware that students need that they couldn't afford on their own or that their parents couldn't afford. And so schools can pool their resources together and get this equipment so the students can still have these hands-on learning experiences. Obviously, social skills and networking is a whole nother talk that students still need. And I'm curious about maybe some other things that you all think about, and that's maybe something we could talk about during the Q&A is, how can we continue to bring value to students in this new era and massage our approaches so that they're still effective. Another sentiment I like to talk about is personal brands being the new job security. And this is going to go into the first AI activity that I want to show you all. And so the reason I say that I think is kind of intriguing. So I'm a millennial. That's what I identify as. And how many of us, well, let me ask you this. What adjectives do you think of when you hear the word millennial? It's okay. I'm not sensitive. Like you can tell me. Yeah. Whatever comes to mind. Skinny jeans. Okay. Okay. All right. I won't take that personally. Any other adjectives that come to mind? Like when you all heard about millennials entering the workforce, like what were you hearing about millennials? Yes. Whiny. Those whiny millennials. They're always complaining about stuff. What else? Jack of all trades, multiple jobs. Okay, that's actually I want to touch back on that in a second. Is there anyone else that has opinions about millennials? Any positive stuff? Yeah. Empathetic. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Anything else that comes to mind? Yes. Poor writing skills? Oh, poor. Okay, I thought you said, but good work-life balance. Oh, okay. Okay. Can't relate to that one, but yeah, were you gonna say something? We want to have work. Aspirationally, we want to have that. No house, probably, also. Yeah.
They move from job to job, right?
Yes. Yeah, they move from job to job. So that's exactly what I was getting at, right? And when I think of job security, right, there's a reason that we move from job to job so much as a generation. It's because the workforce has completely changed. The dynamics by which we interview for jobs have changed. The average millennial statistically stays at a job between 2 and 3 years, right? And so it's unlike my mom, she's a Gen Xer. She's been in her job for now 20 years and she's happy there. And she's got a family at the workplace and all these other things. Like I never felt that same feeling and the workforce wasn't built in the same way for me, right? And so for millennials, I think a big concern for us in the way of work-life balance is job security. Like if we are pretty much setting up our lives to bounce around this way, how do we have a next generation version of job security? And I think this applies to Gen Z students as well. I argue that it's personal brands, right? And so I'll talk about this a little more, but I built a personal brand as the STEM guy. And during a tough time like COVID, when a lot of my friends who actually had more stable jobs ended up losing them, I was able to maintain gainful employment because tens of thousands of people all over the world know that the STEM guy does these things, right? And so it doesn't have to be tens of thousands of people. Like I said, I have friends that are photographers that have that brand, and that's what gives them job security, because someone's always gonna need a photographer. If you have 1,000 people that know you, one of those 1,000 people is gonna need a photographer like once a week, you know? Another reason that personal brands are so important is because we literally Google search everything. This one is just what comes up when you type, why do I? We literally just Google search everything all the time, right? But I always talk to students about this. If you're a student and you're applying for college, what's one of the first things you do? Google search the university. Well, the university is also Google searching the students that apply, right? And so again, that's an opportunity for, as a student, you can build a personal brand. And so good things come up. You know, I think there's always been so many warnings about, you know, don't take pictures with holding beer bottles online because that'll make you look bad, right? But on the other side of that, imagine if a college is Googling your student and they see all their coding platforms that they built and all these websites and cool things. Well, that's now good branding, good personal branding that can work well for the student, right? For jobs and college and other things, all right? I think that adding on to that, reviewing everything is also a big part of that, right? How many of us have ever left a bad review for something we didn't like? Yeah. Oh, you're that person. You're that person. I usually, if I feel bad, my thing has always been like, I kind of like don't want to like mess up other people's stuff. So I'm like, I feel like I'm too nice. I don't disagree with that approach. I just feel like I'm too nice. But this is how people maintain a brand, right? If you're an Uber driver with 4.9 stars, you will remain gainfully employed much more than an Uber driver with 2.7 stars, right? If I see an Uber driver that's picking me up with 2.7, I'm gonna get another Uber, right? And that's a brand. That's a version of a personal brand, right? If you think about it that way. So the STEM guy is my personal brand. It's given me all this job security. It's something I've been able to create, but it's not a unique story, right? All these millennials and emerging Gen Zers are building brands in the workforce too. And I always argue that a part of that needs to be, a part of education needs to be empowering students for using these personal brands, right? So what does that mean in the context of AI? We'll get to that in a second. Just another piece of that is you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think this is a really important quote in the context of the Gesu school. I was talking to a lot of the students yesterday, and I think it was really good for them to see a young Black male that is talking about these kind of things and showing them what's possible in STEM, right? And my experience actually wasn't like this when I was a little younger. When I was in a laboratory, I had an experience like this, where I was the only Black guy in the room, right? And this is a pretty common experience in STEM, and I talk to a lot of young people about this. But unfortunately, where I was able to kind of persevere through feeling isolated culturally and not feeling like I had people I could talk to on the side, other students don't have that same experience, and it leads to stats like this, where Black and Latinx students leave STEM majors at twice the rate of white students, right? Twice the rate of white students. So our first activity, and this is just gonna be a short version of it, a little snippet of it, to address all of these points, is STEM hero origin story, right? And so what I like to do is I like to have kids imagine themselves as STEM heroes, to almost create their own Wikipedia page for a future version of themselves, but being really precise and specific about they went to this school, got this degree, went through this program, they work at this job, right? Or they built this business. And so we can use AI tools to help kids find their STEM hero origin story, right? So this one's gonna be our first activity. We're gonna need our phones for this. We're probably not gonna do it in the same way here, but this is how we would do it for students. So you break into groups of 4 or 5, and you draft a 250 character fictional STEM professional's bio with ChatGPT. So I'm not gonna tell you all what to write as the prompt. You all would have to use your understanding of AI to come up with a good prompt. And then we edit that biography for clarity and fact check it, right? Because ChatGPT makes stuff up, right? It might say you got a degree at a university that doesn't exist, Or it might say you got a degree that doesn't exist at a university that does, right? And so that's the opportunity for kids to fact check and learn more about these tools. And so, to add to that, you can create images and a Wikipedia style page, and then you can share that completed profile with the class. So, yeah, so we're gonna jump into Kahoot. I'm gonna test this out and see what you all come up with. If you all will bear with me here on this experiment. So what I want you all to do is, we'll go to the next one here. So this might be tough for you all to do from your phones if you're not super savvy with these tools. But what you could do is you can go to ChatGPT on your phone, write a prompt, and tell it basically in 250 characters or less, write a STEM hero origin story, but give it a little bit more specificity, and then you can paste that prompt into the Kahoot. It might be a lot for some of us, but I know there's some of us that can figure this out. I only want a few answers here, and then we can just dissect the ones that we do get. So those of us that feel like they're gonna do it, just focus. I'm gonna talk to those of us that feel like they're confused right now. So raise your hand if you feel like this task is like, it's too much. Okay, thank you. So it's really interesting because there's a divide here, right? There's like a digital divide. And I think if we can understand prompt engineering, right? Because that's what this skill set is called. I think as teachers, it's really imperative for us to understand what prompt engineering is and how to engineer a prompt. And basically what that means is how to type the right thing in ChatGPT so that it gets the right answer. It looks like we got one answer. So we got somebody in here that can do it. We got 90 more seconds, so we'll probably get a couple more answers that come in. But prompt engineering is what's necessary to achieve this. I know we can get more than one answer. I see some people chugging away at it. But I think for those of us that feel completely confused by this activity, what we're asking to do here is actually, if we had a little bit more time, because I know I'm on a kind of a time crunch with the talk, we could probably all achieve this, right? Because it's actually a pretty straightforward activity. You go into ChatGPT, you type up what you want, it spits it out, you copy that, paste it into here, right? So what I'm asking for, although it sounds like, oh, you're using AI tools and doing all these things, what I'm asking for is not super sophisticated. It's just that we might need a little more time to do it, but it's all something that we can do, all right? We got 4 answers. I think we can get to 5. What's the what? The game? All right, we got 5. We got 5. Oh, 6. Nice. Okay, so yeah, let's show the answers. Okay, so this is interesting. So the first person wrote the prompt as opposed to the answers to the prompt. So I also think is interesting for us to see. So if you were to go to ChatGPT and type something up, you'll probably type what's in the top left. I want to write a STEM hero origin story. Ask me 5 questions to better help you write my story, right? And that'll get ChatGPT to start a conversation with you where you can easily figure this out, right? Now the next one right under that, it sounds like they started a prompt. They answered the question in 250 characters or less. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, a botanist named Lily Green discovered a hidden grove with ancient mystical plants. Unbeknownst to her, a rare orchid emitted a cosmic energy that merged with her DNA. Now that's interesting because that sounds like a fictional heroic story, right? And so again, as a teacher, you have an opportunity to say, okay, what you put in the prompt here probably didn't specify that you want this to be realistic, right? And they have an actual degree and go to school, right? In a city of innovation, Dr. Emily Reed transforms into BioBlaze, wielding plant-based powers to restore ecosystems and combat environmental threats. Her STEM expertise fuels a green revolution, inspiring a new era of sustainability, right? This one sounds more realistic, but it's written in that heroic language, which I think is pretty cool. And so again, it's about like figuring out what you wrote that prompt, how you engineered that AI prompt to get that specific response. Maybe we'll look at two more. Here's one that seems a little more realistic on the top right. This African-American woman pursued a bachelor's degree in computer science at MIT, where she excelled academically. During her summer, she interned at leading tech companies such as Google and Microsoft, gaining hands-on experience in software. So this one sounds pretty realistic. For the 250 characters that we allotted for, this is probably the most realistic you can get that you can fit in 250 characters. And maybe we'll do the Notre Dame one. Meet Skylene Savior, a North Jersey girl turned superhero. After studying at Notre Dame, she relocated to Philly. Using her education, she fights crime and uplifts, let's scroll down, thanks. Uplifts North Philly, becoming a beacon of hope for the community, right? So, Ariel, which one was yours? Oh, okay, cool, BioBlaze, awesome. So we read that one. So this is an interesting activity, right? It's a really quick, short version of it, but you all could imagine that we could turn these into like a full-length essay, a full-length Wikipedia page. And how many of us know what Midjourney is? Midjourney? Okay, so Midjourney is an AI image generation tool. So the same way that you can type a prompt and get text from ChatGPT, in Midjourney, which is free to use for everybody, you can type a prompt and make an image. So I could type a prompt of 100 educators sitting in a gymnasium, all smiling and enthusiastically waiting for the keynote speaker to say his next word. And then it'll probably generate something that looks like this. No, but in actuality, it's a great way to punch up your Wikipedia page with different images that are also made by AI. And then you can reprompt those, but then there's all kinds of lessons there about how to design a good prompt and make it more effective. So hopefully this makes sense to those of us that it made sense to, and then for some of us that feel like they're catching up, maybe work with the people next to you, all right? If we have a question. Okay. Okay. Right, so who feels like they don't understand what just happened? Just to be clear. Okay, that's cool. No, that's really helpful understanding. What's ChatGPT? All right, great. That's something that I assumed. So thank you for clarifying that for me. How many of us know what ChatGPT is? Okay, so ChatGPT is what I was referring to before is the largest AI. It's basically a chatbot. You're familiar with like chatbots where you type something and it responds to you. It's a really advanced chatbot where you can type really sophisticated things. It can give you really sophisticated responses, right? And it's revolutionary because it can do math, it can write essays, it can do science, research experiments, all those kind of things, right? So it's a revolutionary AI tool. Lesson plans, so it can help teachers and it can help students. So it's been a concern for teachers because students are using it for cheating, and that was kind of why you saw the big cheating thing. But it's also a helpful tool for teachers because it can help them design curriculum more effectively if they know what they're looking for, right? So the activity that we just did, for those of us that were completing the essay, the activity that we just did was we used ChatGPT, which is a free platform. It's completely free to use. You go to openai.chatgpt.com, right? And you talk to the chatbot directly, right? And so I gave the folks that were doing the activity the prompt of writing your STEM hero story in 250 characters or less. They would type that into ChatGPT, the chatbot, and they say, hey, write a story for me about Skylene Savior, who is from North Jersey and is a hero in Philly, and make it less than 250 characters, right? From that prompt, it'll spit out a response, something like this. They copied that text and then they pasted it into here so that we could all see it. So it's not super sophisticated. You just have to understand how ChatGPT works, and it's really just an advanced chatbot, right? So thank you for that clarifying question. Hopefully that brings us all up to speed a little bit, and I'm sure there'll be more questions, so we can tackle that at the Q&A as well. Okay. So this next one, actually, let's go back. Let's go back to the presentation. Sorry, we'll touch this next question after. All right. So the other piece that I like to talk about is Gen Zers' desires to be entrepreneurs. How many of you all would have guessed that I generated this photo using AI? How many of y'all? Okay, so a lot of us have a pretty trained eye at this point. What makes you think that I generated this using AI? Can you shout? Because you do it all the time. But like, what about this photo? Yes. Right. Yeah, so the AI image generators often have these like errors that just like they seem illogical for an artist to do, right? Yeah, so the other big issue with a lot of AI image generation tools is specifically fingers, right? So if you look at the fingers of the guy, not that that's impossible to have 6 fingers as a human, but this person has 6 fingers. And that's actually a very common thing that you'll see. Was there something else? Did I hear something else? Yeah, so sometimes text it struggles with, but the newer generation of AI image generation tools, like this one from GPT-4, is actually really good with text. So in this less than a year period, these things have gotten a lot better, right? And I'll just go back really quick before we talk about STEM Shark Tank. I'll go back to this one. So this one was also AI generated, right? And usually, like I'll pick some of the ones that I think are pretty high quality that don't have that many errors. But is there anything else that you all might see in this one that looks a little weird? It's okay if not. That means that shows how advanced it is. Yes. Yeah. So that's a great question to keep us all up to speed. So what I would go to in one of these advanced AI chatbots, I would type, make an image for me. And I know I'm very clear on the image that I want, right? I want to make a poster for this workshop called STEM Hero Origin Story. So I would say, make a poster for this workshop in quotes, STEM Hero Origin Story, where I have a diverse array of scientists and engineers dressed as superheroes, right? And that's probably what the prompt looked like. I made this like a few months ago. But that prompt would then spit out this image, right? So just from that text description, we have this image that comes out. All right, yes. Yeah, yeah. Which one? No, this one was ChatGPT. So that was an interesting point. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so there's a lot of these different tools, and they'll have different artistic styles. So I talked about Midjourney as one of the image generation tools, and then ChatGPT is another one. But they all kind of look a little different. They have different looks and feels. And as an artist, when you want to generate certain things, you want to make certain things look different, right? So there's an ethics issue with all of this that we're going to talk about as well. So we're going to unpack that.
So you typed in this prompt and it gave you that artwork.
I typed in the prompt and it gave me that artwork, just like that.
Just go to you.
Yeah.
So no one else.
So basically, so you all had like a conversation in the DMs, right? Like like on Facebook, how you direct message someone. I'm having a direct message conversation with the robot, a private conversation, and I'll send that message, and then it'll send me that image.
So say if there's a Jessica Schaefer in North Carolina who typed in a similar prompt, she would have gotten a different picture.
Every time you type in the prompt, it's going to spit out a slightly different image. Even if you type the exact same text in, it's going to make a somewhat of a variation based on a complicated algorithm that, quite frankly, I don't understand. But you can, so even like with the same prompt, you can regenerate and it'll make completely different images. But like it'll make similar images, but with slight variations. I know it's like some of us are at different levels of understanding here, so hopefully this is helpful for everybody to just kind of get everybody up to speed. All right, so STEM Shark Tank. So what we want to do with STEM Shark Tank, and this is actually a really fun workshop that I've done with a lot of kids without AI, is to devise an invention to solve some listed STEM problems, which I'll show you all in a second, and then craft your project pitch using ChatGPT's assistance. So I'll give you all some sample STEM problems, and then you ask ChatGPT to make a pitch to solve a problem that we outline, right? And then from there, you would make a prototype of that, right? So you could go back to these photo generation tools, and you could, once it tells you what, like, so a great example of this, we'll go to the next slide really quick. So space junk, right? A really common STEM problem. How many of us have heard of the space junk problem? So for those of us that haven't, there's a bunch of debris orbiting planet Earth all the time, and it moves really fast, and it can break a lot of stuff. And so we need to clean that debris out, but it's a complicated engineering problem. So we might type, you might type in ChatGPT, help me develop a pitch for a tool to solve the space junk problem. And then it would say, oh, space junk collector 3000, right? It will come up with some invention. You can type what the description of that invention is into the image generating tool, and then it can spit out an image of that tool, right? So this one's a little more sophisticated, but we're gonna do, again, a simplified version of this. So for those of us that wanna participate in this one, would you all mind taking a picture of the STEM problem just so you know, or just picking one that you can refer to, right? Because we're gonna use that and we're gonna put it in ChatGPT, okay? And I'll again describe kind of what those people that are doing it, what they're actually doing so that we're all kind of up to speed. Okay, so we're gonna jump back into Kahoot here for the STEM Shark Tank. And so essentially, and everyone that is gonna be doing this, you all understand what the task is, right? I'll show you the prompt in a second once we get the Kahoot up. How many of us feel like we're learning something about AI? Okay, awesome. How many of us feel like this is like all information that we've never heard before? Okay, somewhat. Some of it's kind of familiar, okay. And my hope is that it should be familiar, but it's building on stuff that's already established. All right, so STEM Shark Tank, all right? So, can we actually refresh this? Or yeah, I'm not sure if we ran out of time. If we haven't run out, okay, so we have to start it back up, and then we can just skip through maybe. Okay, so yeah, everyone that's participating, why don't you type this new pin in, and then we can just start it 760111. And we'll skip to, I think, question 5 it is. Yeah, so essentially what the people that are participating in this activity are gonna be doing is they're gonna take that pitch, copy the prompt into ChatGPT, get an answer, and then they might refine it a little bit, figure out what seems interesting or seems like a good pitch, and they'll put it into ChatGPT. So almost there, going to number 5. All right, here we go. So STEM Shark Tank, with AI's help, write your STEM pitch in 250 characters or less. So it's a solution to one of the sample STEM problems that I provided. Pick a problem, copy that into ChatGPT, prompt for a solution to the problem, and create a pitch in 250 characters or less. Give you all a little time to do this, see what y'all come up with. So the cool thing about STEM Shark Tank, for those of us that feel like it's a little too confusing, I'll talk to y'all while everyone else is working. The cool thing about STEM Shark Tank is that I've done this with educators and students, and people have literally come away with business ideas that have become viable businesses after STEM Shark Tank. And one of the really cool things about STEM Shark Tank as a workshop is that the prototype you build can be based on the resources that you have available. These are all free tools that you can use to build pretty interesting looking prototypes, but you could also build a website. You could also build a robot, depending on how much budget you have or don't have. You could write something with markers in a poster board as your prototype, right? So yeah, and then in the same way, how many of us have seen Shark Tank? It's the same way that Shark Tank works. You jump up and you pitch that for funding. You pitch your prototype for funding. All right, so we have 3 answers. Maybe we'll go to, once we get to 5, we'll just go and then we'll start reading them. Yes, is there another question? So ChatGPT 4 is the paid version. You have to pay $20 a month to use it. The free version is right now, I think, ChatGPT 3.5. And so, yeah, you can use the free version for these. And I'll talk about the difference between the free and paid version if that's helpful for you all. So let's go to the end of that and show the answers. And if there's more coming in, we'll read some of those. Revolutionize space debris cleanup with solar-powered orbital vacuum. Efficiently clearing vast areas, this innovative solution tackles the Earth's space junk crisis head-on, right? So you can imagine someone taking that short description, building out a pitch deck, or building out an invention that actually looks like a space vacuum, right? Introducing Quantum Guard on the far right, a revolutionary AI-driven quantum encryption system disrupting cyber threats. Unparalleled security through quantum entanglement ensures data protection, forging the future of cybersecurity. So this one feels like interesting, but a little confusing, right? And I think, again, that's an opportunity as an educator to help your student revisit the prompt. Well, what about this one? It feels a little jargon heavy. And how can we make this easier to understand? You might be able to reprompt ChatGPT, talk back to it after it gives you that response, and type, make this so that a first grader can understand it, right? And if you say that, it'll simplify what answer it gives you. And so this is a really cool tool. Again, you can immediately implement in your class. Let's see. Introducing Guard Shield, a multifunctional device combining UVC sanitation, that's ultraviolet rays, real-time health monitoring, and educational resources. Empower communities to prevent infectious diseases with advanced technology, right? This last sentence actually feels a little superfluous, right? If we're thinking about like making a pitch, you don't really have to say that at the end, right? And so again, thinking about how we can reprompt to get the right pitch, right? And so instead of, and essentially what I'm getting at here is that ChatGPT can be used as a really helpful brainstorming tool, right? It can either give you the initial idea that you build on, or you can take your ideas to it and dissect those ideas and make them more powerful, right? But you shouldn't just trust ChatGPT blindly. And I think that's what we're gonna get at next. So let's jump back into the presentation. You shouldn't just blindly trust ChatGPT. And we're gonna talk about why AI tools have a lot of ethics issues. So I don't know how many of us maybe saw this headline in the New York Times, but there's a boom in AI and there's a huge test of copyright law that's coming. I don't know if y'all saw the New York Times suing ChatGPT. Any of us see that headline? Yeah, so a lot of interesting stuff that's happening right now. First things first, I live in Los Angeles. How many of us heard about the strikes, like the writer strikes, the actor strikes? So that was a really interesting time to be in LA because there was a huge debate about, well, if I can get AI to write a movie for me, if it's that simple, right? If I can just write a 10-page script for a sci-fi movie and it will spit a real script out, maybe it's not that good, but you can build on it. Like, do I need to fully pay a writer now, right? And so that became a huge hot debate. Because the other problem with that is that what I didn't talk about so far is that everything that we use is trained on a data set, right? So in order for AI to get these really sophisticated, high quality results, it has to be fed a bunch of stuff that has been created before, a bunch of creative works that are owned by other people. And that's where it becomes controversial, and I think an interesting opportunity to teach students, right? So a lot of these image generation tools that I talked about, they're actually using real artists' work and they build on that work or they slightly iterate that work to make this new image, right? And so there's been artists that have been able to find like, oh, that exact thing has only been designed by me. And I see that in AI images. And so they definitely stole my artwork, right? But it's like, is it stealing? And so the word that we use legally, and I'm not a lawyer or a legal professional, but the word that's used is called derivative works, right? And so how many of us have like drawn a picture before? All of us, right? Most of us probably don't draw freehand, right? You see a picture or you see something Or you might see a picture that someone else drew and then draw something that looks like that. That's a derivative work. It's completely legal, and that's a completely original new work, right? And so what AI is doing, people are arguing, is it's looking at this work and making a new piece of artwork. The same way that our brains look at something, modify it slightly, and make a new one, right? And so that's a really hot debate that's happening right now that I think students should be really aware of, because the future of this is going to determine the future AI tools that they end up using, right? Really interesting stuff. So, and this was another AI image generated tool. Any thoughts on how you can tell this one is generated by AI? Yes. Yeah, like the skull is kind of like an evil thing, and it's like on the good side. And then the arrows are both pointing in the right direct, like they're both pointing right. So good and evil are on this one side. That's kind of weird. And then there's like a hook, what is it, like a ship anchor, but it's like half of an anchor. What's going on there, right? This is an imperfect image generation, right? Because it's because if you think about the process of how all this is working, it's taking a bunch of different images and then it's making a new image. And so it's trying its best based on its understanding of what good and evil and ethics and all these things are, but it doesn't always get it right, right? Anything else that comes to mind here? I think this is an interesting image.
Yeah, the text on the side that says stupid.
Words? Oh yeah, it's just like jumbled up words that don't make any sense. A very common AI thing for when you generate an image with AI. All right. Okay, so we'll unpack the little activity that we'll do here. So again, students create these 3 scenarios where AI is used for classwork, and I actually went and kind of went ahead and made these examples for you all. A math problem, creative writing, and research are the 3 examples that we're going to use, right? And so we share those responses with the class, right? So you ask students, talk about some ways that you could see people using AI. You don't have to say this is ways you do it, but ways you can see people using it. And then you rate the acceptability of each scenario and debate the answers as groups. So on one side, you could have students talk about their personal opinions. On the other side, you could say, you argue in favor of using this tool, this group, and then this group argues against using the tool, right? So we're gonna jump back into the Kahoot here. And this one should be a little simpler. All right, so the first one, how acceptable is it to use AI for math homework, right? So for those of us that are still in, $22 answers submitted, right? So this is just a way to do this, obviously, with a room this big, but you do this in a smaller way with a different group of students. So it's interesting how this animates. This is what I thought the answers would be, kind of like skewed towards the middle, right? It's mostly not never acceptable, and some people think it's always acceptable, but the average is like right in the middle, which is really interesting. But I think, what could happen after this is a debate, right? You could talk about, well, if AI is just a calculator, and if like AI is like a calculator for more advanced word-based math problems, what's wrong with using AI for everything? Well, you can't use it the day of the test when you have to show your comprehension of the material. Well, why not? And so there could be interesting back and forth discussions about that. We'll go to the next one. So how acceptable is it to use AI for creative writing? So this one is literally what the whole WGA strikes and all the Hollywood stuff is based on, right? Literally using AI for creative writing. And again, a lot of times, younger students are aware of some of these things, and they'll actually have pretty interesting and developed opinions about these issues. And so this is the issues that are going to affect their workforce. So they need to be thinking and talking about them today. All right, let's see where we are with this one. Use AI for creative writing. So we skew, I mean, we still kind of skew more towards the middle here. But again, it seems like most people think it's almost never acceptable. That's really interesting. So you should always create from yourself and not, because like plagiarism is kind of what I think the term that comes to mind for, using derivative creative works. If someone else wrote a script and AI is using that as its data set, aren't you just plagiarizing millions of people? Well, not necessarily, because if you design a prompt that is really specific, it might be your creativity that's fueled and fleshed out by AI. So again, really interesting conversation points that I think students should be having everywhere. Let's go to the next one. AI ethics dilemma. How acceptable is it to use AI for research? So this one's interesting, right? This could be any kind of research, right? Maybe citing your sources. Let's see where we net out here. Oh, whoops. Can we go back? Sorry, I don't know. I don't know if that was me. Yeah, let's. Oh, Kahoot. There we go. How acceptable is it to use AI for research? Very acceptable. So that's interesting, right? So it seems like the majority thinks it's extremely acceptable to use it for research. I would argue on the other side of that AI can be wrong, right? It literally can cite incorrect sources. So if you're going to use it as a supporting tool for research, you should still know the dilemmas and the issues that AI has with figuring out where its sources come from, right? I do think, though, I tend to agree with this, that it's usually pretty acceptable to be helpful to figure out how to search for stuff, right? So let's jump back into the presentation. Yes. Right. Right, and I think, yeah, and that's an interesting piece too, is like how this question is framed is not that precise and specific. And I think the open-endedness of the question for me is by design to prompt this kind of discussion among the students, right? Because I feel like if it was easier for people to answer the question, it wouldn't be as easy to debate the answer to the question, So yeah, we're back here in the presentation. Okay, so a couple other really quick fun AI activities. Prompt engineering lab, this is one I've done with students, it's pretty fun. We group students into teams, present 5 poorly worded prompts to the class, right? So this gets them like figuring out how to make a prompt better. And then you challenge the groups to debug the prompts, right? To fix them, right? So you might have misspelled something, or you might be asking for completely the wrong thing. For example, like, tell me what year in 2024 Christopher Columbus discovered, And so that's gonna give you probably a bad answer because you've given it contradictory pieces of information. So this is a great way to get students understanding the process of prompting and prompt engineering, right? And using virtual production, and this is what I do with our video content. Maybe we can get these videos up and running after for the Q&A. But basically what I was showing is that we have this camera and we're literally following this person in this environment that's not real because of AI tools that we're using. So really cool stuff if you have a media budget that you can do with AI today. So again, here's a recap of all the STEM activities. If you all want to take a picture of that, I see some of us with our cameras out. STEM Hero Origin Story, STEM Shark Tank, AI Ethics Dilemma, Prompt Engineering Lab, and cool STEM videos. Okay? So, last time we're jumping back into the Kahoot, just want to get one thing from all of this that you think students can learn about AI tools, right? What is one last thing? So we're going to jump right back into the Kahoot one more time. Is it going to start the Kahoot again? Well, you know what? If we're gonna let's skip the tech on this, and you all just tell me what is something that I was just trying to get some data. It's cool. So, what's one thing that you all think students could learn about AI from some of these activities? Like one thing that comes to mind. Anything? Critical thinking, right? Critically analyzing and dissecting information. Yes. Sorry? The editing and revision process of prompts, right? Like figuring out, okay, you make a prompt, it spits something back to you, you don't like that, refining that, improving that with AI, all right? Yes. Right, so it's helpful to use AI as a research assistant, almost like, and the way I use AI a lot of times is like an intern, right? Like I think that's a really good way for you to think of AI, because it's like an intern, well, they're young and they make mistakes, but they can be a real workhorse and they can work for free. And so you can get them to do all this work, but you kind of gotta like make sure they do it right. So that's how I like to think of AI. Yeah. Yeah, like it's a great introductory tool for STEM. Again, everything that I'm showing you all here is a free tool. Every single AI tool that we discussed today is free to use. Yes. Creative problem solving in general, right? STEM Shark Tank. It's a great way to just find solutions to problems. Yes. Right, confidence and knowing something they didn't know before. To like take students to do these three activities with students. You're teaching them AI ethics, you're teaching them prompt engineering. These are advanced skills that professionals are using today in the workforce. A kid that knows these three things alone is now light years beyond their peers in other schools. Okay? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's a great point. Like, bringing real world examples, of which there are many in news headlines today, about lawsuits against AI companies, the writer strikes, and making it real for students. So that it's not like you're just debating this esoteric thing in the air. It's like, no, these are affecting all of you all's jobs in the future. So you need to have informed opinions about these things, all right? So thank you all for participating. We have a few more notes to wrap up. How many of us have like STEM backgrounds or do like STEM education work or any of these kind of things, right? Some of us, okay. So what I always like to say is it's incumbent on us, even if we're not in STEM directly, to advocate for STEM, to talk about how cool it is. And this is the nature of a lot of the work that I do, but I always want to tell this story. So I grew up in the South Side of Chicago with a single parent home. Ariel was talking about that in my bio earlier. And I didn't feel like I had any role models in STEM. Little did I know I actually did. This was my grandfather who passed away when I was 12. He was an electrical engineer. And when I was a kid, I thought that was like a train conductor or something like that. I was like, I don't know. Like, I thought he like worked on trains. Never worked on any trains. He actually held a patent for this circuit in an early prototype of the VCR, right? So this was like a brilliant guy that comes from my lineage. And I found out about this right before I went to college. And that's one of the reasons I got into STEM. But I really wish I would have found out about that sooner, but the problem is not with my grandfather not telling me about this. The problem is with the culture of STEM, right? A lot of times in STEM, you're taught, shut up and do the work, or let your work speak for itself. But we're not out here on TV like Bill Nye, or these kind of things, like advocating for the cool work that we do and showing other people how cool it is. And because of that, we might be not showing our students the things that they need to see when they're looking at basketball and rap and all these other things, to know that these are cool, sustainable, well-paying career paths. And so I always encourage people to advocate, because I just wish I would have known a little bit more about my grandfather when he was alive. And this is the last piece One of the last pieces I'll leave you all with. So growing up as a kid in Chicago, I heard a lot of these adjectives used to describe the type of kid that I was. And a preferred adjective that I have these days is underestimated, right? I felt like I was a kid that society thought was less than. And I used to see those descriptions and think, well, I'm not gonna be somebody. Like, I don't have as many resources as all other kids. I don't have as many opportunities. And so when I always heard these words used to describe me, it affected my own internal perception of self. I think this adjective is a much better way for kids to think of themselves because it helps their perception of what they can do in the future. And I just want to say a lot of us reach a lot of kids, right? And I think the amazing opportunity that we have with these AI tools and with STEM education work at large is that a lot of the solutions to the world's problems today could be trapped in the minds of kids that just don't think this stuff is cool or interesting. But we can spark that and then put them on that path that creates a butterfly effect for them to literally change the world. And I think it's incumbent on us as educators to do that. Again, thank you all so much. My name is Mr. Fascinate. I hope you all learned something about AI today. And if not, we have some Q&A where I'm happy to take a deeper dive and answer some of your other questions. Yes. Or maybe if we can try to get that first video to play, just to give them some context on things. Yes.
All right. Hey, everybody. I don't know if there's a form. My name's Fav. Fav Jimenez. I run a small consulting firm to help schools get a grip on technology like this. We help them with data visualization, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of my clients who are districts in particular, offices, are trying to get a grip on this kind of technology. And I'm doing our research right now. That's why I'm here. But I'm curious from your perspective, what are one of the most important artifacts or tools or guides that a central office can provide individual member schools or individual
So you're saying in the context of AI, what tools can be provided to teachers so that they can help, they can be onboarded effectively?
Yeah.
I think that's a great question that I wish I had a great answer to. Like, I think that's what we need right now. And so like the short-term solution for me has been doing workshops like these where I onboard people with ChatGPT as like this kind of middle person. Like, I took the deep dive, I'm an early adopter, I understand the tech. But I think a scalable solution is like turning me into a software, right? Somebody might be working on that right now. I don't know any things off the top of my head, but that's why I think it's important for me to continue doing this work in the interim.
Thanks.
Hi.
Not exactly.
Oh, okay. Oh, there it is. Hi, I'm a volunteer in a fourth grade inner city classroom, and I'm tutoring this girl who is very, very much below grade level in vocabulary, reading, writing, whatever. And her homework assignment was to take 10 vocabulary words and make them into sentences. And in the beginning of the year, she was really struggling quite a bit. And then I noticed almost overnight that her sentences were getting really, really good. And then as I read on, they were really, really too good. So I went to the teacher and I said, dang, I think we've been botted. What are we supposed to do? So I would love to, haters here and you, what's a way to, praise her for having the ability to do this, but also make sure that she's actually learning, because when she's just copying these things out, she isn't. So I'm just curious to know what you all think.
Anyone else want to tackle it? I feel like this is not an uncommon problem. I feel like there might be someone that could tackle this in the audience. If not, I can weigh in. But yes.
Yeah, the way I'm seeing a lot of schools handle this is, particularly when they catch them, is they will have the student kind of look at the output from the platform, whatever it is, and they'll say, okay, now here's the rubric that I'm going to use to grade this. Let's work together to figure out why this output is unsatisfactory. And then from like a more kind of shifting mindsets view, the kind of language that I really like that I've heard from a few places, that when you do this, you're kind of robbing yourself of your voice, and that your kind of unique perspective is taken from you when you kind of use this technology, and that's something that only you have. And I think that goes a long way to shifting kind of the mindsets, while also making sure, like, pedagogically you're pushing forward, and then they have to do it again, so it's kind of like a double duty.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. Like, there's an interesting conversation about like the top-down versus bottom-up approach to using AI, right? And we can think about this a lot of ways, but if you think about it from like a top-down perspective, it's like, write me an essay that's 2 pages long about Christopher Columbus, right? And then it spits out something. Then that's a top-down way where AI is basically thinking and creating for you, and you're losing all of your unique creative sauce, right? But the bottom-up approach to using AI could be, well, I'm a student from Philadelphia, and I always thought of myself as an explorer, and all my life I wanted to learn about new things. Write an essay about Christopher Columbus based on my ideals around exploration and being from Philadelphia, and so it kind of then becomes a little bit more unique to the person, and still influenced by AI, and still that may not be the optimal solution, but that could be a way to think about using AI tools a little more ethically in the creative space. Yes.
The example you just gave, it still gives the bot the creative. I mean, it's a better prompt, or it's more direct prompt. It's a better prompt, but it still gives the bot the creative task of pulling it together.
Right.
If you want the students to do that, then maybe you say, okay, I want to write an essay about Christopher Columbus. Come up with 6 themes or 6 issues around Christopher Columbus that I can use. Then you have a bunch of ideas, but it's your job to weave them into the essay.
Right. And that's still, to me, a bottom-up approach, but I think that's an awesome way to put the ball back in the kids' court of doing the lion's share of the work creatively and being inspired by AI. Yes.
It seems to me that the prompt-based method is dependent on how good your database is that gets searched. How do you make sure that that database is accurate?
That is the big debate of our time right now. And so, because you basically, there are ways to do that that are being figured out. So Adobe, how many of us use like Photoshop, Premiere? So Adobe has what's called Firefly. I mean, have us heard of this AI tool? But Firefly uses a database of licensed images. And basically what they've been able to do is they can algorithmically determine when you make a prompt and it spits out an image, it used 1% of this image, 2% of that image, 3%. And so it literally pays the people that are licensing these images out by the percentage of the image that was used to make the prompt, which is really, really like data-driven and technical. But I think it's the path forward for every type of data set that we use. So I can imagine, an academic journal, being really clear about these are papers in our academic journal, and we use, let's say, Nature, right? A publication like Nature. Nature.ai only uses Nature as its source material. And instead of making a big, broad platform like ChatGPT that uses everything from everywhere, you use one platform's data that, like, Nature has, they fact-checked all their own stuff. They know all their own stuff is legitimate based on their process. And then they use that as a data set to make their new Nature.ai chatbot that you can only talk to get Nature publications.
So if you were going to take a look at like medical research, use only peer-based reviews by credible sources and medical, officials or practitioners, you could limit the database that's used. But you couldn't do that in Chat.
You can't do that in ChatGPT today, but there's this new thing. So you know how we have like an app store for Apple? So there's now a GPT store. So ChatGPT is they're basically allowing companies to build their own GPTs, which basically means if you're, like, let's say you're a medical journal, you can build a medical journal ChatGPT, give ChatGPT your data set, and then when people type in ChatGPT, they can reference the medical journal which this stuff might be sounding like confusing to some people in the audience, I know. But yes.
If I could simplify it, it sounds to me almost like a search engine when Google first appeared.
Yeah.
So as a classroom teacher, every year we did MLK Day essays. So kids wrote essays. Among the top Google searches about 10 years ago was actually a website that was designed by a hate group to basically generate false information about MLK. And if our kids just typed in MLK Day essay, that's what you got. It was one of your top choices. Now, it's been taken down because people found out about essay. But the whole aim was to get you inside of a chat room, the neo-Nazi group, so that they could start to convert you. And the thing that was really scary about it, when we used, was everybody in America, from 6th grade on up, 5th grade on up, they're going to do an essay on MLK. So the key to me, I think, with all this technology is how good is the information you're getting below the prompt, below the search, and how do you make sure that that's reliable?
And I think so. The interesting thing is, December 1st, 2022 is when all this stuff came out. We're a little bit over a year in. All these at first everyone was just mind blown by the fact that this was possible. Now we've kind of all set our expectations a little bit differently. And now we're thinking about these things. And now we're putting the pressure on all these exciting AI tools to be like, well, let's critically analyze this. Let's make sure this is good. And I think that's the next iteration of this. It looks like we got the video of me asking the robot out. All right, let's see.
Do you have a boyfriend?
I do not have a boyfriend. Are you asking for a friend?
I'm asking for me.
I see. Unfortunately, I am not on the market. Robots do not have relations. Do you have a boyfriend? I'll take that as a yes.
And then Amika just looks up. Like, can we pause real quick?
Relatively.
So yeah, Amika just looks up and with like this look of like, I just burned him. I just ended his whole career.
She outed
Yeah. So that video just went so viral. It was such a fun experience because I remember I was like, man, I wish somebody recorded that. And then some other girl recorded that, like some TikToker girl was just happened to be in the audience and like perfectly got the camera movement back and forth. But I just remember having the experience like, wow, no one's ever gonna know about this. And then everybody knew about it. Yeah, let's start this one from the beginning too. And thank you all so much for that.
Videos have always had relatively low production budgets. And a lot of the content that we've been able to make with PBS and Discovery was conceptually very cool, but I think that there's this promise for making higher quality immersive content with virtual production. Because of all this innovation that's happened with green screen technology, LED volumes, and generative AI, this technology has become cheaper and more accessible than ever before. And for that reason, we can make really high quality, cool stuff using virtual production. So I joined forces with NWP and
created all those
started this
environments
concept called a second home.
This planet, this whole scene, all this.
An astrophysicist is going to be visiting a number of different places to find a new home for humanity. And we have some really cool ways that we're going to turn that into an educational piece using virtual production.
We have this camera on a jib, and it's going to be moving around and capturing our subject in greater detail to feel more vlogger style so that there's more going on.
As I was creating these assets.
So you all know, like with most green screen, you have a static camera and it's just looking at the person. But this is next level because you can move the camera and the environment moves to make it look like they're actually there.
To place the coda here on exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system that we haven't ever visited before, but we want to show people what it's like to set foot on those planets. We're going to take a little bit of artistic liberties with that, but because Dakota is a trained astrophysicist, we're going to have a lot of actual data to use to perform the visuals that we create. I really see virtual production as this technology that can revolutionize educational content. You can do stuff with nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, shoot something in Antarctica on a green screen, and I mean, it's just the prospect of that is super exciting. Yeah, I think we're going to change the game with this one.
We've discovered over 5,000 planet.
You don't get to see that every day. Proxima Centauri is orbiting those two stars you can see behind me.
I'm gonna go in for a closer look.
Welcome to a second home.
So yeah, that's a concept that we're working on right now. But the cool thing about it is we made those environments using AI with a procedure that's called procedural generation. So the way that this works is that, like, let's say we have a row of 50 chairs, right? And I just make a single row of 10 chairs. I can have these new tools using AI tell me what the rest of the scene is going to look like, right? And so what it used to take designers hundreds of hours to make, you can now make the stuff in a couple of seconds. And so this revolutionizes everything. And my dream as a super nerd has always been to make sci-fi. And I couldn't afford to make sci-fi, and now I can. So I'm going to use it to educate people and probably make some sci-fi too. But it's a cool application of AI. I mean, it's revolutionizing everything. But a few more questions? Yes?
Image created AI programs where you can copyright. There we go. You can't copyright any AI image, AI created image. So this would prevent companies from bypassing a concept art or character designs and then just use it for their video game, because anybody would be able to then just take that and use it for their own video game, for T-shirts, for toys, or because they determine that AI or that copyright can only be extended to humans and not AI.
Right. I think that's a really interesting issue. Just to reiterate what you said. So essentially, anything that's like the newest copyright law, and I'm actually dealing with this with PBS right now, is that any image that you generate can't, like using AI, can't be copyrighted. So even all these things I'm using for my presentation, not owned by me, right? In the same way that if I designed it, it would be my material. However, I think there's still a little bit of gray area with that because, where do you draw the line there? Like I know how to like trace over stuff. I could like take this image, trace over it in a software program, and then now is it mine? And so I think and there might be an answer to that question in the legislation today, but I still think a lot of this gray area is being teased out in real time. And it makes for great conversations for students to have because they're using a lot of these tools. Is there another question? Oh, we got the mic.
Regarding to AI images, as the technology gets, more realistic and better, I guess from the industry, what are the concerns of it being like too good, especially regarding to like doctored images or, kind of feeding into a lot of like misinformation?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. And one of the things I actually brought up with the students, and it was like one of our Kahoot quiz questions yesterday, was deep fakes. And so the idea is that you can actually use these AI tools to make a fake video of someone else saying something that they never actually said in their voice. As long as you have enough data from the person and what all the stuff you need, which is like why it's really easy to impersonate celebrities with AI, is a headshot of them in a few different angles. And you need a bunch of samples of their voice. So if you have like a political figure, they've got hours of speeches online that you can just feed into this thing. And so maybe some of you all have seen some of the like Joe Biden songs that people are making. Like, I don't know if you all know Ice Spice or whatever, the rapper girl, but they made Joe Biden rap her song. So it's like all kinds of trolling stuff on the internet that's clearly not true. But then it's like, I mean, you could start a war, right? If you like have a political leader making a video. And so I think it's a huge concern right now with that. And I don't think people have a solution to it necessarily, but how many of us, this is something that I've been thinking of. How many of us remember NFTs? That was like a pretty popular thing. Oh, okay, yeah. So, and I feel like usually when I bring up NFTs today, there's like some eye rolls in the audience. Like, man, people were literally paying for JPEGs, right? But I think the underlying technology around NFTs is really interesting because if you remember, it was all about digitally authenticating something on the internet, right? Making something that's digital a one of one. And so in an era of AI, when videos can be fabricated, everything can be faked, artist drawings can be made. Well, now we really need to digitally authenticate our stuff. And that seems like a way to do it. So it may not be the term NFT because I think it's been kind of villainized at this point and associated with scams and all kind of other stuff. But I think there's going to be a resurgence of that technology to help prevent that. Like imagine if every video released by the U.S. government is an NFT, and so it's got that stamp of digital authentication on it, so that you know that this is safely, definitively a U.S. government video. You know, I think that's where it's going. Yes.
I was just wondering how you would suggest for younger teachers to kind of solidify computer literacy, period, so that they could then even touch the AI stuff. Because I think with the generation of kids that we have, we're like, they're young, they're always on TikTok. Of course they know how to use a computer, but in reality, they don't even remember their credential logins. So like, how do we get back to like, just solidifying that part instead of thinking that since they are on their iPads all the time, that they know it? Like, how can we reinstate just general, like, do you know, like typing and things like that?
Yeah, I think that an interesting way that I've seen some teachers build that stuff into lesson plans is basing it on the things that kids are already doing and helping them do things better, right? Part of me is like not sure what good of typists, you know, the average kid is today if they're better with their thumbs than they are with their fingers. Yeah, better with this, right? And then the other issue is that like voice commands have gotten so good because of AI that it's almost like writing in cursive, right? So I'm like, is typing going to be the new writing in cursive? And then I don't know if you all read about the brain implants, like Neuralink, where we're supposed to, at light speed, communicate with our devices. And so now I don't even need to talk anymore. I just have a new language with my... So I think there's like a slippery slope here. But at some point, literacy is still very important. And I think it's about building those skills into things that kids are already doing, right? Kids love video games. The software that we use to make that media content that I was showing you with procedural generation is literally video game development software. It's called Unreal Engine. It's a really popular free tool. It's designed by Epic Games, the same people that made Fortnite, which I know is a little out of style, but the kids still kind of love Fortnite. Yes.
So do you think that there's like a need or a use for like traditional tech classes? Because I'm young, but we went to tech once, twice a week. I was born in 01, and we had to learn how to type, and tech class was like a real special, like a serious.
You were born in 2001?
And I am a teacher, indeed, yes. My own class is crazy. But, you know, I grew up like with tech classes were super, like that was a big special for us. And I feel like I had a lot more fundamental, like, but is there not a use for that? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, I think a tech class is even more important. And like these fundamentals are even more important and should be more frequently addressed with kids. Because they might, like, again, it's like they know the entertainment side, they know the consumer side of tech, but they don't know like the creation side, the development side, and a lot of times the workforce side of tech, right? So just watching TikTok videos is not gonna make you literate with technology, in my opinion. Do you remember dial-up internet? Do you remember that? Oh, okay. Oh, you don't remember it from personal experience? 2001, y'all. Yes.
I guess mine is more of a comment, and I think I guess if I'm thinking as a 13-year-old and I've been given an assignment and I can write a prompt into AI and it spits out something back to me. My concern is that at some point I can involve a student of his or her creativity and they no longer thinking for themselves and doing for themselves. I mean, I think that AI is certainly a wonderful tool, used correctly, but I'm also concerned that it's taking up a part of the person's creativity or self-reliance. And that's where, I guess, for me personally, I'm a little bit concerned.
I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern, very much so. And I think it's a trend that we've been moving towards since technological innovation. Like we're developing more and more symbiotic relationships with these devices, right? Like how many, I mean, maybe you all are different from me, but like if you're in a new city and you're trying to find a place to eat, how do you find a place to eat? Google search. And then what do? You see what has the best reviews. That's AI. It's making all the decisions for you. Like it's already doing that. So ChatGPT is just another iteration of Google search and AI making decisions for you. Not saying that that's right, and not saying that we still don't need our faculties and our creative abilities. But I think the other side of this argument that I've seen is just like we were scared about like kids not knowing how to do anything when the internet became a thing. Well, now the internet's become an entire marketplace, and all these internet skills have become important. And so I think these AI skills are going to become important too. But the scary part is we might lose a lot of those things. And how do you argue to a 13-year-old that hunting and camping is still important in the age of AI? You know, like that was a tough sell for me as a teenager. I love it now. I feel like I understand it as an adult, but I think it's a really interesting question. Again, like these things are all like new problems, and I don't have the answers to everything, but I really want us to all be thinking about them, you know? And I appreciate y'all for standing with me. This is a complicated lecture with a lot of different pieces, right? And I just appreciate you all's patience for kind of like walking with me on this journey and teasing out some of these things. Because these are tough calls, man. I don't have the answers all the time. Yes. Oh yeah.
So what are your thoughts on AI slowly taking over more and more jobs? And if that continues, eventually there really won't be enough jobs for people to do. I mean, you have hotels with automated machines and AI running the front desk. There was a McDonald's or something that it's fully automated, doesn't have staff in there at all. How do you feel about that potentially eliminating more jobs than we have people for, and eventually just not having enough to go around?
Well, if you ask a billionaire, that's their utopia, right? No one works, but I think it's like, you know, that's not the reality for everybody. And one of the biggest concerns I have with that is the digital divide, right? Because it's not just like everybody doesn't work. It's some people don't work. And who are the people that aren't going to be working in this proposed future that, you know, we don't know how it's going to play out. But who are the people that aren't going to be working? It's the people that understand how to leverage these tools. And so the terrifying thing to me, again, is that there might be a whole group of students that don't have access to the information about how to leverage these tools, that then in an era where work, like blue collar work, has become completely obsolete, or even some aspects of white collar work has become completely obsolete due to AI, they're not going to know what to do at all. And so again, that is why it's so incumbent on us to teach kids these skills. Like even if it's hard, even there's a learning curve for us, even if we might complain about it, even if technology is like annoying to constantly have to keep up with, like the kids' future survival is at stake here because of that, right? Again, like that future to me is a little, it's concerning. It's scary. The other argument I've heard is that people will always going to find a new job, right? Like people were worried about that when the telephone came out, and then that created a whole new industry. Don't know if that's true anymore, right? Because it's like, at what point, like AI is just doing stuff like, I don't know if you all heard about this, but knowledge workers stand to be the most disrupted by a lot of the AI tools. So what I mean by that, just to clarify, is what AI is doing is taking a large amount of information and synthesizing it to give you an answer. That's what lawyers do. That's what a lot of accountants do, and that's what doctors do. So today there are like legal, and actually a lawyer friend of mine showed me this, which was kind of some behind the scenes stuff. They have a legal AI that basically does all the lawyer's work, and they just have to check it, and then they give you an answer, and they charge you the same amount. It's not every law firm, but it's something to think about. There are other tools out there like IBM Watson, which is a supercomputer, and you can send it images of people's, like, let's say you got a rash right here, or you got a cough in a certain place. It can take all that information, both visual and text-based, and it can spit out a diagnosis that's more accurate than any doctor today, right? And so when we think about who's going to be disrupted by these jobs, it's sometimes not what we think it is, right? So man, I don't have like I'm fascinated, excited, and terrified at the same time. But like the best thing that I feel like I can do today is just help people learn about this stuff, you know, and just teach people as much as I can. It feels like I'm a cog in this bigger wheel, though, you know. But thank you for the question. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. As educators and as parents, grandparents, whoever, gave us a lot to think about. My daughters are 11 years old, and her best friend had to write an entry essay for 6th grade National Honor Society. And she went to ChatGPT and said, write an 800-word essay in the voice of a 6th grader and put in the 5 pillars that they had to include. And in 30 seconds, it spit out an essay. Now, she has very good parents who said you cannot submit that. But she went and wrote her own essay. My question is, how much of her essay was informed by what she just read that ChatGPT wrote for her? And so, you know, I'm not an educator, I'm a fundraiser. I've gone in and I've asked ChatGPT to write sample acknowledgement letters for me because I was just curious. They don't bring all the stuff that we, you know, put into it, but it's amazing, this technology. And we're fortunate to have Justin here today. I had the privilege to have dinner with him last night. I will tell you that he will be a household name in a couple of years. I'm telling you, the work that he does beyond what you've seen, some of the stuff that he showed our kids is pretty amazing. I'll tell you, you know, this audience that he's doing a partnership now with Bill Nye, the science guy who I knew growing up. My kids love Bill Nye. He's a generational person, and I think, you know, Justin's the next Bill Nye. And we're really excited and privileged to have him. So another round of applause. And I will emphasize, check his social media out. Follow him. Again, you'll see all the great things that he's doing. You'll learn a lot from him. And appreciate you all coming out for our first symposium back since 2019. It's really great to see people here in the building and online as our first venture into hybrid live streaming goes. And have a wonderful weekend. Take care.